You've tuned in to I Am Not a Number Live, the review show with Cardinal Sin and friends, where we review a different episode of The Prisoner starring Patrick McGoohan. Each week, we discuss a different episode and its implications then and now. Follow along and make sure to catch the episode in our viewing order so you can be ready to ask questions and participate in the chat. New episodes premiere each week on Wednesdays from 3 to 5 Central. The show's surreal and political implications on the reduction of the individual to a number have an even more insidious impact today, as all of our information, phone calls, texts, likes, photos, and other data are harvested to be sold and turn us into product rather than consumers. Get ready for a deep dive into one of the most important shows to have an impact on pop culture and society ever. And remember, I am not a number. Welcome, welcome, Cardinal Sin Nation. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to I Am Not a Number, number 15, Living in Harmony, but I can't do it by myself, so please welcome Rick the Unmutual. Hey, Rick.
Hey. Hi, everybody. Good to see so many people here. I must apologize for my appearance being kind of like a kind of dust storm, dust bath. I'm trying to sort something out, which is a little bit...
It looks to me like your ceiling if it were in 1975.
Shame it's not 1967. That'd be a bit more appropriate.
There you go. 1967, maybe. Maybe like your dad's Super 8 film or something. Anyway, welcome to the show, folks. We've got a really good one for you today. Living in Harmony. I don't know. This is a tough one to tackle. What do you think, Rick?
I love Living in Harmony. It's another
Don't
one of
we
those,
all?
a bit like last week's, where you could say, does it need to be there? Does the series move along quite nicely without it? Sure,
Yeah.
it does. But I think
nicely.
I think it's still great because I think it's a great 50 minutes of the whole series kind of put into one thing. And funnily enough, they were going to try and there were at one point, I'm sorry, they weren't going to actually do it, but at one point they were discussing about if they had to do another series, what would they do? And they were basically toying around with the idea of basically having people in a different situation each week in the outside world where somebody would be a prisoner. So you'd have someone who works in the shop and can never get any time.
This is almost proof that it would work.
Yeah, because you can have any situation. So in this one, it's obviously, it's a Western. This is the prisoner in 50 minutes, if you like. He resigns from his job. He doesn't want to play ball. He doesn't want to do what, he's imprisoned. He can't escape, etc., etc. But in a Western scenario, and I think it works really well. I think the performances are great. The music's phenomenal. I think the atmosphere is really nice. The last 5 minutes are kind of probably the weakest part of the episode, to be honest, when they step out of the Western and go back to the village, and that all becomes a little bit, I see what they were doing all along. Right.
Well, I'll be interested to get your take as we go along.
Yeah.
First thing I need for you to do is vamp for me while I cook up a hot fresh URL.
No problem. So, give people a bit of background about how this episode came about. So this was sort of the second production block. They'd made 13 episodes. They needed to make 4 more.
So to go back even further from that, isn't it true that Patrick McGoohan wanted to make 7 episodes, Lou Grade wanted to make 26 for CBS, and they met in the middle at 17?
Yeah, CBS bought 17 episodes in the autumn of 1966. So there was a possibility.
Because that's all Patrick McGoohan would make.
Well, they wanted it as a summer filler, and 17 would fit that slot. So that's what CBS basically found out early on. They didn't want the series. They were, Tracy, is Tracy arriving?
I think he is. Can you see Tracy?
I can see somebody called Tracy arriving. It's a black screen.
Yeah. Tracy's coming up. Hey, Tracy.
Yes,
this
the
is
ever.
wonderful.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey, Tracy.
Did you see your face right there?
Yes, of course.
That's where you are. You have to have it.
You guys can see
Mostly hearing you.
me okay,
Are you
right?
hearing us?
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Can you hear us all right, Tracy?
Can you hear us?
I am hearing you.
With no headphones?
I don't have headphones.
With no headphones right now.
Okay.
How's everybody doing?
Okay. Well, we can hear you and see you, so it's fine.
Good.
There you go, Rick. Nice.
I'll have headphones on in a second, fellas. So
Okay.
I'll be able to
So
hear
anyway,
you even better.
as you were saying, Rick.
Yeah, so this episode came about because they needed to make 4 more quickly. One was going to be the finale. Once upon a time, the penultimate episode, they'd already kept back to be the penultimate episode. So they needed to make 3 other episodes quickly. One they came up with, which was last week's episode, Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, which they kind of cobbled together.
Stole the title from this one for.
They had an idea which was based on a storyline that David Tomlin had written for Danger Man, which ended up becoming The Girl Who Was Death, which we're going to
You're
do
going to have
next
to
week.
keep it like
Next
this so they
week?
can see.
But they were still short of 1 episode. So they said, well, look, we've got none of our writers have got any ideas. Let's ask the crew if they can think of anything. So
Right.
Eric Marble, who was the music, Eric Marble,
Like,
who was the
who are
music
the
editor.
last people you want to ask for an idea for a production?
Yeah. So basically, the crew in the cutting rooms came up with some ideas. So Eric Marble submitted 2 ideas. One was kind of based around a Malcolm X type orator figure would arrive in the village, and number 6 would befriend him, and it would be all about that.
Back again.
And then a second idea
no.
that Eric Marble
There
came
you
up
are,
with
right there.
was
There you are.
number 6 being
Right there.
ingratiated into the Russian Orthodox Church for some reason. I
I
can't
don't know,
remember
honey,
what the
but they can see
storyline
you
was.
and
But
everything you're doing.
David
That's
Tomlin
bizarre.
took one look.
Hand away
Yeah,
from your
David
mouth.
Tomlin took one look at those and go, no, we're not going to do those. Tony Sloman, the film librarian, submitted an idea, and Ian Rakoff submitted an idea. He was an assistant,
And he was like an associate director, right?
assistant editor. So he was assisting in the editing of the episodes.
Oh, I thought
And-
it said that he was the assistant director, or the assistant director.
No, he's an assistant editor. So he was assisting
right
John
now,
S.
Ken.
Smith on the editing of the episodes It's Your Funeral and The General. And he submitted an idea based on a Gene Autry comic.
Right.
In which
Yeah.
it would be a Western scenario whereby...
Oh, you really know your stuff.
There was
is
something
yeah, I've actually got a copy of the comic, funnily enough.
I don't get it.
It's like you
so
do this
number 6 would
professionally.
arrive in a total
Ah.
harmony, and it would basically be as I say, a reflection of the entire series, but in a Western in one episode where he is forced to wear a gun, didn't want to wear a gun, wanted to escape the village
Gil?
of harmony, couldn't escape. And
Yes.
that was, Tracy wants you.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? The sound is coming in the other room, Robin. Hold on, guys. We're trying to fix the sound here.
Working the internet.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, that was how it came about. It was an idea from a crew member. Let's do a Western. Now, Frank Mayer and Patrick McGowan had always wanted to do a Western. Frank Mayer was Patrick McGowan's stunt double on the series.
And
They'd
of
already
course,
wanted to
we've
do a
just
Western
come
anyway.
hot off the heels of Ennio Morricone's or Sergio Leone's Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns, which
they
were
come
huge
like-
smash hits.
Did they come later? Were they 70s rather than 60s?
There were a few in 1967. Yeah, that was like the slick new thing.
Yeah. So that was how it came about. So David Tomlin took Ian Rakoff's script, kind of molded it a bit as to how he wanted it a bit more, which annoyed Ian a little bit, and that's how it ended up. Obviously, they had to have a kind of pull as to why are we doing a Western, so it was kind of tied into, well, that he's being fed hallucinatory drugs. Let's see if we can make him crack by, a bit like A, B, and C, see if we can manipulate his dream state and see if he'll reveal something about himself.
Yeah.
As the time goes on. It was a pretty naff plan to be fair, but you get the impression at this point, if we take this to be the order of the episodes, that the village authorities are getting a bit desperate for ways in which they can try and get the truth out of number 6. And you feel that this is one of those desperate ploys.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just a really freaky episode. While we're waiting for Tracy, let's say hi to those who are here. Hail, Peter Graves. Hail, Ari, my brother.
Peter Graves
hail.
from Mission Impossible.
Hmm?
Is it the Peter Graves from Mission Impossible?
But he may be named after him. I'm not sure. I think his name is actually Peter Graves. Herc 130, hail. Darius Munchausen is here. Hail. Naked Fame. Thank God they haven't been keeping track of how many prostitutes I've been with. Well, that's your problem. Michael Beacom is here.
Hey.
Always welcome.
Yeah.
Darius Munchausen, Canadian
Hurrah.
Spider-Man. Low Spec Linux Laptop is here. Michael Beacom says, Cardinal Sin, you said each week you review a different episode. Well, this is a different episode, all right. And then we've got a Russian bot that we need to block. Tell you, with increasing popularity, success, fame, whatever, the more Russian trolls are gonna be in your life.
They will soon control the world.
No, not this world.
Are you doing your bit?
Naked Fame, check Google statistics, we're all on there somewhere. I have been putting the shows on IMDb. A lot of YouTubers have been doing that. Darius Munchausen, the lovely Sherry is here. Hello. What are those headphones of which you speak?
See, headphones play a key role in the episode, don't they? It's we get the big reveal, don't we, of where
we do, but hold. Let's wait for that to unravel on its own. Michael Beacom says, Rick the Unmutual, they don't seem to be too concerned about damaging the tissue in this one. That's pretty funny. Hail, Tracy Tormé, he was here and gone the next. Darius, nice touch with getting the accent correct. And until he returns, we shall continue. So, one thing I wanted to ask you is, before I murder this guy's name, is it Rakoff or Rakoff? Rakoff. Say, I was going to say Rakoff. So
well,
okay.
See, there is a very famous film director called Alvin Rakoff.
See, now you're just going to confuse me.
Yeah. Who directed? What was that film with Peter Sellers? That was
Pink
also
Panther?
No, there was a play first. It's a bit like Lolita. It's that kind of story.
Was it his last film?
No, it was a famous film with Peter Sellers. But Alvin Rakoff directed that, and he was the one that sort of found Alan
Ion.
Rickman, Sean Connery.
Ion Rakoff.
Alvin.
It's not Ian?
No, Alvin Rakoff. Ian Rakoff worked on The Prisoner. Alvin Rakoff.
Oh, Ian. Okay. All right. Now you're confusing me.
Well, I'm so
confused.
Well, with this series, it's easily done, isn't it? Yes, yeah. Anyway, you wanted to ask me something about Ian Rakoff.
Well, yeah. First, I wanted to start out mentioning that The Prisoner had originally been conceived by McGowan as a serial of 7 episodes, but ITC managing director Lou Grade had the intention to sell the series to an American network and therefore demanded 26 episodes, as any good series should have. As McGowan couldn't come up with that many stories, they made a compromise and decided upon 17 episodes. In light of these events, McGowan and the writing staff had to come up with 10 more episodes, one of which was Living in Harmony. As McGowan would later state, the goal of Living in Harmony and other padding episodes was to make them as visually exciting as possible, but still retaining within them, the plot of the theme of violence doesn't pay off. And it's sort of waned to the end. So McGowan enlisted Ian L. Rakoff, who had worked as an assistant editor on earlier episodes. Yeah, there you go. You're right.
Yeah.
You're always right.
Although I must correct you on a couple of points there. The 7 episodes, I want to only do 7 episodes, is only something which he came up with years later.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
In the mid-70s, he kind of started to say, I would have preferred to have done 7. That was never actually on the cards.
The original plan, yeah.
Yeah, there was no
He just
production
basically
history.
quit before they were all done.
Yeah,
and,
there was no production history.
Was such a misanthrope that he scared away George Markstein.
So they'd booked 2 slots of 13. You're quite correct on that. But it was decided very early on that CBS would buy 17 only. So it's actually not true that they quickly came up with 10 more storylines. That's kind of apocryphal, really. And they'd had 13.
That's a good thing they wrote 4 second episodes.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. So they've already got 13. So it's not true they had to come up with another 10. They had to come up with another 4 of the story, of which obviously we went through earlier.
Yeah.
And this was one of them.
So, moving on then, McGowan enlisted Ian L. Rakoff, who had worked as an assistant editor on earlier episodes, to write the episode. For the theme of the episode, Rakoff drew largely upon his personal experiences as part of a leftist movement in South Africa during its apartheid regime, as he believed the policies and philosophy of the apartheid regime resembled that of the village. The idea of a sheriff refusing to bear arms was directly inspired by an incident that occurred while Rakoff was in South Africa, when during a night out, he had the intention of shooting a man he considered to be a racist, but was stopped by another group member. Rakoff explained, "Later, I was warned. If I had wanted to go from associate to full member of the group, I'd have to be more disciplined and give up the gun. It was irresponsible in that world at that time."
Absolutely true.
And I think that's important when consuming this episode, to know that, or at least to discuss, after viewing, as we are now.
He's a fascinating man here. I know Ian. I know him personally. He's still with us. He's the only writer on The Prisoner still alive, and he's a fascinating man. And if you get him talking about his life in South Africa, it is, scary, really.
Let's take him down the pub and get some stories out of him.
Well, he's written a book called Inside the Prisoner, which deals with a lot of his time on the series and his experiences.
Is it available at, say...
It's only available second-hand, used copies at Amazon.
This sort of a website?
No, I'm afraid it's not, because it's so out of print. It was printed in the late 90s, so it's out of print now. But you can get second-hand copies. Very nice of you to mention my website again. No, that's lovely of you. But he's a fascinating man, and he does have an online blog. So if you Google his name, it should come up. He has an online blog that he has, where he talks about life in South Africa. Mostly it's about comics, because that's his passion. He went on to work with Lindsay Anderson on If, so he's got a good pedigree in film as well. But yes, thank you. This is the unmutual.co.uk you're putting up there. Thank you very much for advertising my website.
Of course. It seemed to me that you would be able to, while I'm fudging for this information, that you might be able to tell us what's new on the Unmutual.
Well, the only thing really that's new since the last time we spoke last week is there's a little feature on a thing called Second Life. I don't know if you or any of your readers have come across Second Life. It's basically sort of a Sims virtual world that you can
I've played Half-Life
around him. That you can wander around him, and somebody's built the village on Second Life, so kind of a virtual version of the village
cool.
that you can kind of click on and walk around.
Poor Marion and everything.
A 3D village, yeah. So there's a little feature about that has gone up this week.
Actually, what would be really cool, this is kind of off topic, but it would be cool for somebody to do a video game where they do like almost a Google video-esque of all of Port Marion, so that it could be like a modern day video game and have all the locations photorealistic.
Well, I mean, I think you can go on Google Earth and the Google car has been to Port Marion, so you can
I'm
kind
sure.
of do a bit of a walk round it, so to speak.
Which is,
do you ever think you'll come over to the UK and get to go to Port Marion itself, Cardinal Sin?
I'd certainly like to. I don't know.
Well, if you ever do, I'll be your personal guide. I'd love to show you
anytime soon. Well, that'd be great, Rick. I will definitely take you up on that.
Great.
Michael Beacom says no. The Man with No Name series was over with before this episode. At Rick the Unmutual, they don't seem to be too concerned about damaging the tissue, etc. Okay, so Inside the Prisoner, radical television and film in the 1960s by Ian Rakoff, $12.99 on Amazon. Nice.
There you go.
All right, so getting back to the story, and I'm going to have you follow up after this, Rick, because I want to get your feel on it.
Sure.
During the first American broadcast of the series, Living in Harmony was not included. CBS stated that this was because of the episode's reference to hallucinogenic drug use, yet several authors have disputed this argument since mind-altering drugs were also present in various other episodes, yet these were not censored. Instead, they argue that the network feared Number 6's refusal to carry arms could be interpreted as an anti-war statement. As the plot was recognizably American, being a Western, they argued the network banned the episode in fear that it carried with it a message against U.S. presence in Southeast Asia, the Vietnam War being at its height. Official spokesmen from CBS as well as ITC have since confirmed that the episode's implied war commentary was why it wasn't shown during its original U.S. run.
Can I ask what your source is for that information, Gil? Because what you've just read out is all complete rubbish.
Is it really?
Yeah, none of that is true at all. 2 years ago, an interview was done with the man at CBS who pulled the episode, and he confirmed that none of that is true. It wasn't pulled because of drugs. It wasn't pulled because of Vietnam. It wasn't pulled because of guns. It was simply pulled because something happened in the news that week that meant they had to pull the episode, and that was the reason.
Really? Oh, so this all was just concocted later.
That's all stuff.
It's just myth. It's part of the show mythology.
Yeah, it's all urban myth that people have come up with. Oh, it must be because of the drugs, man, or
none of it really rang true, to be honest.
Vietnam was around. It must be the guns. No, the guy at CBS on camera, not just a written interview where people could make it up or change it. He's on camera saying, no, something happened in the news that week. I can't remember what now because it's 50 years ago. But I remember something happened in the news. We had to pull something. We pulled the prisoner.
Yeah.
And that was what happened. So all the talk of it being guns or drugs, I'm afraid, isn't true. And unfortunately, because what happens, you know this better than anyone, I'm sure. Once someone says something and it's kind of put into folklore, it then spreads. For every book that was ever written in the 80s or 90s, every website that was written in the 2000s about the prisoner, all had what you've just read out on it. And it spreads. Unfortunately, 55 years on, we find out the truth. No one's going to go to all those websites and update them and change and rewrite the books that have been written. So unfortunately, the urban myth and the folklore will probably outlive us all.
The part that I read actually comes from the Living in Harmony Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
What I just read to you came directly from the Wikipedia page.
Well,
I don't usually research on Wikipedia because I kind of think that that's cheating. But I also, use some other websites. But that was actually, directly from Wikipedia.
Okay, well, Wikipedia is often wrong, and it is.
Well, it is this time. So tell me, how is it wrong?
because the man at CBS has said, I pulled the episode, and I pulled it because something happened in the news that week that meant we had to pull an hour from Saturday night, or whatever night of the week it was.
Could
and I chose
whatever happened in the news have related to the content of the episode, or was it just dumb luck?
He can't remember. He can't remember
Can't
that.
remember.
But we know that it wasn't pulled because of the attitude.
Of course he can't remember.
Well,
All right. Okay.
But we know
I'll
it wasn't
play.
Vietnam, and we know it wasn't drugs.
All right.
Because that's an editorial decision. And he said,
Okay, so let's take a hard left turn here. You and I have had our back and forth about the original series of Star Trek's influence on the prisoner or the lack thereof.
Going, and I love it.
Yeah. Now, this episode has Star Trek music in it during the action scenes, and even the punch sounds could easily be traded with the original series without notice. Even the fight sounds and when bodies hit the ground and stuff, they use the same Foley, and this episode has Star Trek all over it. When the action is building, you get music straight out of Star Trek. It's almost like da 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 da. As a matter of fact, Star Trek has a bottle episode, Spectre of the Gun, from its third season. That's another shoot a Western on the back lot episode. We don't have money for anything else.
Yeah. They didn't even have a full Western set, did they? They'll do it on a...
No, it was mostly just facades.
Yeah, that's right. But I've always had a soft spot for that episode.
But, one was on the MGM backlot and one was on the Paramount backlot.
Yeah, exactly. There are some similarities you can draw. I love the music in Living in Harmony, especially
even the suspenseful music is the rolling of timpani drums, just like in the original series.
Yeah, if you want to do that fast-paced action stuff, then that's the way to go with it. And it shows.
Yeah, well, speaking of fast-paced action, at the beginning, 1 minute I think I'm watching The Prisoner, and then it's Dr. Sin, and then Braveheart.
Yeah. But I tell you what, there's no opening titles to this episode. It jumps straight in with. I mean, I can't.
And they'd have to. For this episode.
I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that when I first saw this, I did think to myself, okay, have I got the right channel on? Where's the prisoner? That's Patrick McGowan. What's going on? And how many people thought they'd accidentally got gun smoke? Or something?
That's a good point. How long does it take before he comes on screen? Do you know?
Well, he comes on screen kind of within 10 seconds, so you know it's McGowan, but you're still not, is it the prisoner? You kind of then realise, he's resigning, and then you kind of get the gist of it, once he's captured and
now
whatever.
Another thing that kind of continues our friendly argument in this episode, I think we're pretty well on the side of number 6 being a former secret agent rather than a scientist. The way he takes out the kids shooting from the hip like that, you'd have to be pretty good with a 6-shooter or incredibly lucky. And I don't know if a scientist would have all those secret agent skills.
Well, for filming, while McGowan was in America filming Ice Station Zebra, he took lessons on quick draw shooting from Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, really?
For the episode, and that's why he genuinely on screen it's McGowan, and you think, wow, he's actually he can draw a pistol. Yeah, Sammy Davis Jr.
That's great. We have some other. Ivan Ivanovich is here. Afternoon.
Hey, Ivan.
Desilu backlot. Oh, yeah. I sit corrected. And he also says the shot of him putting his badge on the table to mimic the normal opening title sequence.
Absolutely.
Is to mimic, yeah. Well put.
I always ask this of you, and I always ask it early on, and I'm going to do the same now. Did you enjoy the episode, Cardinal Sin?
I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I just watched. I'm serious. What the actual fuck did we just watch? Michael
watched
Beacom says,
as a
Rickium
Western.
Mutual, I completely thought that some other show was on.
Wow,
I
yeah.
missed the public TV intro saying The Prisoner and completely thought they had replaced the show with something else. Oh,
Fantastic.
Michael, I'm
Same
sorry.
here. Same here.
Yeah. And D. Bud Martin, Hale, says, Sammy Davis Jr. could do everything. That's right, baby. He was groovy, man. He was groovy, man. Actually, I did want to show you this. This is a Living in Harmony I can get behind. Let me make myself big here so I can show you. Living in Harmony. Can you see it?
Version. I can see it. Now,
this is by Nicholas Briggs.
If you thought the Western was weird,
featuring Mark Elstraub. Yeah, if you thought the Western was weird, but you know what? He actually has a very good look. He doesn't look like Patrick McGoohan, but he looks like he might be, and maybe it's just my ignorance, he might be an actual regular actor.
Oh, Mark Elstob is a regular actor. He was in a very famous soap opera here in the UK called Emmerdale, which you probably wouldn't know there, but it's
I have never heard of that.
Yeah, no, it's like a 3 nights a week popular soap opera, and he was in that. So he's quite I would say well known, but some people may know the face. And he does a lot of work for Big Finish. He pops up in a lot of.
His prisoner, his Patrick McGoohan as the prisoner, it is certainly better than mine. I mean, mine's not a professional imitation, but his is. I mean, and he also has his own style. He sounds like Patrick McGoohan, uncannily like Patrick McGoohan, but he's obviously, I suspected that he was also a stage or screen actor because he's just too good looking not to be. Well, and he's also just a really good actor.
Yeah,
so,
he is.
Getting back to the story, when the lawman gets up after being shot by the judge, I knew there would be a cardboard stand-up of the judge there instead after he got up. I'm not sure how. I haven't seen these episodes for a very long time. Then at the end, number 8 strangles Kathy, and then he kills himself by throwing himself off the railing from about 8 feet up, which wouldn't hurt even if he hadn't landed on a pad. Talk about doing your own stunts. I'm not really sure what this episode is about, if it's about anything. I guess it's vaguely about nonconformity, but no one could be blamed for dipping into the series and come away wondering, what the actual fuck did I just watch? Or even someone that's an expert on the show.
Yeah, this isn't one to dip in and out of, is it? And I'm glad that you mentioned the kind of suicide fall at the end. There's not many bits of the series that are not laughable, but poor. But that is one of them. That could probably go in the top 10 of them. That's a shame.
You know that he's dead, but it's still like, that didn't even hurt, you know?
Yeah.
And of course,
he should have shot himself.
So people can get an idea, since it's kind of an in-joke between you and me so far. This version of Living in Harmony, the audio play by Nicholas Briggs, I do find pretty interesting. Mark Elstraub does a great version of McGoohan's number 6, but of course this episode takes place in a rocket or on the moon base Harmony, and most of that episode is taken up by number 6 as being convinced he isn't in space or the moon because it's impossible. There are a few interesting moments in the audio version, updated, of course, for the modern listener, but I still think a good treatment and a good story. Rick, what do you think that it means at first the lawman keeps the star but not the gun, and in the end the lawman keeps the gun but not the star?
Well, is that a bit like, I want to be in control, but I only want to be in control on my terms. Hence, so I'll be sheriff, but I'm not gonna betray my morals.
Not going to be sheriff for you, Judge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's basically it's the series played out in a different format. So the week after they could have had a let's do The Prisoner as a comedy, and the week after
I
that,
noticed that somebody had said that
you know.
this episode was actually like feature film material, and it should have gone like 90 minutes.
Well, funnily enough, next week they were toying at one point with doing The Girl Who Was Death as a 90-minute TV movie.
Oh, really?
So the script is a
Did
lot
they shoot
thicker.
any of that, or did they just
No.
make it a
That was
regular?
just something they talked about, and then it didn't happen. You know, we could stretch this out because it is, you know, out of all the episodes, The Girl Who Was Death is the one that kind of has endless possibilities because they're in a you know, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but they're in fantasy land, aren't they? And they can basically go anywhere and do anything with that episode. Would this have would Living in Harmony have stretched to 90 minutes? I mean, I think you'd begin to get bored with it and start to say, okay, I get it now.
I
It's a
actually
Western version,
think
I get it.
because at the time the new, you know, deal was spaghetti westerns. Clint Eastwood building up his man with no name, even though in each of the $3 movies he has names. His character has 3 different names. But I think, you know, including what we just said about Ian, and how he had a real life experience that he based this on, and the way that it didn't make it in the original production when they aired it, I think is a lot of the story of this episode. Did ITV pull it too, or did they show it? They showed it, right?
No, they showed it. They cut 2 scenes. The one where Kathy's brother gets hung from the tree in the main square, that was cut because in the UK that week there'd been an accident where a young boy had accidentally strangled himself with a washing line. So they thought, well, I think it's a bit insensitive to show the public hanging this week. So they cut that scene. And when McGowan has gets basically beaten up by the guy in the Zeke.
Actually, to be honest, that scene, if I may, that scene can be excised with no impact on the story.
Yeah, it makes no difference at all. They didn't cut the whole scene; they just cut some of the shots because of the violence and because it was being shown.
Yeah, okay.
You know, at peak time. So, but no, the episode was shown. Been shown every time the series has been screened. So there were no issues here, and that's because there weren't any issues with it. It just happened to be bad. Like if it had been the week after that something happened in the news, Living in Harmony would have been shown on the original run in the States. As I say, it only wasn't because.
So there's a lot of focus on that the network blinked because the allegory of the man refusing to pick up a gun was too closely linked to the burgeoning protest movement against the war in Vietnam, but it's hard to imagine any program executive being too thrilled by the opening of this week's first episode. Gone is the familiar sequence of the soon-to-be number 6 quitting his government job, getting gassed by a large man in a top hat, waking up in the village, having a voiceover exchange with his newest nemesis. Instead, we see Patrick McGowan as a sheriff in the Old West, leaving his office in a way similar to that of the modern 60s resignation, and then getting set on by toughs in the middle of the countryside. The title pops up on screen, and you see that you can almost hear the collective "what the hell" from an audience 30 years ago. And I think it's still disconcerting, even today, after decades of genre trickery and experimental storytelling on TV. It's also thrilling anytime a show has an established pattern, comforting as that pattern may be. There's something exciting and inspiring when it starts screwing with your expectations. The same can be said of the original Star Trek's Mirror Mirror episode. Are you familiar with that? With Spock's beard? Rick?
My favorite episode. It's my favorite episode.
Yeah. It's also I liken that this episode of The Prisoner to Mirror Mirror because it's one that just really screws with the screws. Obviously, this is the kind of series where you expect your expectations to routinely be screwed with, but the mixture of craziness like Harmony, which metaphorical nods aside doesn't tip its hat to the audience for over 2/3 of its running time, and a more traditional storyline like It's Your Funeral means you're always on your guard. It's a rare show that manages to balance craziness with reliably intelligent storytelling, and by and large, The Prisoner manages that balance. So my question is, why a Western? Because minus its final 10 minutes, that's what Harmony is. There's a corrupt judge, a town that seems to be made up of mostly a saloon and a jail, and there are a few other buildings, but they don't actually matter. Guys on horses, guys with chaps, a woman in one of those dresses that suggest lingerie without actually being it, and of course, gunplay. And while this is all symbolic of other things, the judge is essentially number two, and Harmony, the town he runs, is the village, writ small. It works enough on its own terms that maybe 20 minutes running time more, it could have been a credible, albeit surreal movie in its own right. We even get a villain that's strong enough to stand opposite McGowan's considerable presence. Not the judge, but the red-headed, glaring mute, the kid, played with mesmerizing weirdness by Alex. Is it Connor or Canner?
Canner, Alexis Canner.
Canner, that's what I thought. It's sort of the performance that on a more traditional series would be in danger of running away with the episode, much in the way that the hallucination that lies at the heart of Harmony runs away from its creators. Thankfully, this is a series that has a certain leeway built into its core, so Canner is less an anomaly than an acceptable and regular dose of madness. Your thoughts?
Like I said at the beginning, when I asked you whether you enjoyed it, I really liked this episode, and I'm not sure I did the first time I watched it, because I'm not sure I appreciated what it was trying to do. It was only
the replay
afterwards.
Value is pretty high.
Yeah, it's only when you kind of think to yourself, this is the Prisoner told in a if you take the last 5 minutes off, in a 45-minute Western. And as you say, they could replicate this in other genres and do it as a 45-minute, spy thriller, noir spy thriller if they wanted, or whatever. Any kind of endless list of different types of genres they could do.
And of course, if it had been a feature, it would have got a bigger budget.
Yeah. But McGowan always wanted to do a Western. He talked about doing a Western with Frank Mayer, his good friend and stunt double on the series. And Ian Rakoff put together one for them to do. So I think a lot of it wasn't necessarily that they were trying to say something. I think a lot of it was just them having fun. And I think the same applies to Girl Who Was Deaf, which we're going to look at next week as well. I think it gave them the chance to kind of let their hair down a bit. Let's do something fun. We're going to do a Western. We've always wanted to do a Western, so let's do it. And some of the ideas that come from them having fun are that they can tell a story and they can make an important statement about, the non-conformity, as you say, not being violent, having a moral stance in life. Those sorts of things could then come from the Western. But the whole point of them doing a Western was that they just wanted. And that was the freedom that they had in those last 4 episodes. They decided, look, there's no more stories we can tell in the village. We talked about this last week, didn't we? There's only so many times you can do, oh, you escaped again. Let's try and escape again. Or, oh, let's see if we can find out why number 6 isn't talking or whatever.
Or yes, how back to London can we fool number 6 into thinking he is.
Exactly. So the last 4 episodes actually gave them a freedom to do whatever they wanted. The first being last week, Do Not Forsake Me. Next week, we've got The Girl Who Was Deaf, where, absolute crazy shit. And this week, obviously, we've got Living in Harmony, which is, as you say, you're not sure what the hell you were watching. And, of course, the last episode. Well,
when you ask me, Gil, did you enjoy it? Cardinal Sin, did you enjoy it? I don't know what the actual fuck I just watched.
Yeah.
I usually watch it once and just soak it in, and then watch it a second time for like writing my notes.
Yeah.
And I couldn't watch it a second time. I just couldn't.
Did you find
it
yourself
fucked with me so much.
Yeah.
I just
Did you
couldn't
find
watch it a
yourself-
second time.
Did you find yourself enjoying the story as to whether Kathy would get out and whether he would?
It didn't feel like it had a story. It was like
No?
that bottle episode, Spectre of the Gun, on original Star Trek. It was just like do it on the back lot. There's plenty of Western stuff back there for free. We don't have the budget, make it a bottle episode. And, are you familiar with Spectre of the Gun? The episode of Star Trek?
I am. I love Spectre of the Gun. It's one of my favourite season 3.
I think it's a
episodes.
really bizarre, kind of throwaway, useless episode, but a lot of people really like it. And I'm like,
I think
look,
I like it because it is different, because you do end up thinking, what have I just watched? I want TV to challenge me in that way.
but
I don't want
it ends up not making a difference,
this is
just
about
like
a-
this episode does.
Yeah, it doesn't need to make a
if
difference.
that
It just
hadn't
needs to be-
happened
it just
to
needs be
them,
entertainment.
if that hadn't happened to the crew of the Enterprise, it wouldn't have had an impact at all on the show. Just
But
like
you
this
could say
episode.
that- You could say that probably about 70 of the 79 Star Treks, and you could probably say that about 12 of the 17 episodes of The Prisoner. If you take the episode
Wow,
away, does it really make
you're
it-
your
No.
prisoner to the original Star Trek ratio is pretty high, man.
because there's a lot more standalone in Star Trek. I don't think there's any episode
Let's face it.
that
You don't
takes-
have a website about fucking Star Trek, do you?
Well, no, but
This
I
is
wouldn't
a
have
show
somebody
about
else's
the prisoner.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Maybe you do have
It
a website about Star Trek.
I don't.
Do
I
you?
can assure you, I don't. There's too many other ones out there. As I say, I would have made one had there not been one. And when Loose String and my friend first built the Unmutual and then passed it on to me, there weren't really any prisoner websites out there. So that's kind of why it exists. But I like television to challenge me a bit. I don't get much entertainment out of. Okay, we're gonna tell the story
But
now.
my
Somebody's been killed,
my
I wonder who
mind
did it.
wound
Let's try and
so
work out.
fast into, what the fuck is going on, that I couldn't really pay attention to the story. It took me out of the story because I was like, what the hell is this? I can only imagine audiences 50 years ago.
Yeah, I think it would have thrown a lot of people, and it did me the first time I watched it. As you say, the rewatch value is kind of where it's at, maybe with this episode. But maybe that's just showing, and I include myself in that, so I'm not insulting you or any other viewer. Maybe that is just the fact that maybe as television watchers we've grown a bit thick. Maybe we should be kind of watching this stuff.
I think you're right.
And not having our brains frazzled by it. Surely stuff like this and stuff like Twilight.
Well, as you say, the second time you go through and
should-
watch the episode,
stuff
it's
should all-
really a lot more informed. You don't have that tension getting worked up. But like I said, even the music in this episode has a very strong correlation with Star Trek. It's the same type fight music.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the timpani going up and down. It just, the whole thing, audio-wise, totally reminded me of Star Trek, to the point where I couldn't ignore it. It was definitely either very coincidental or somebody in the, BBC Radiophonic Workshop had been watching Star Trek.
Well, the music for Living in Harmony was all specially composed and recorded by Albert Elms at Anvil Studios for the episodes. It's not music that came from anywhere else. It was specially composed for Living in Harmony. Now, Spectre of the Gun would have been made after Living in Harmony. Living in Harmony would have begun production mid
Yeah, it's true.
67.
I don't think it actually had an influence on it.
It was made until 68. Yeah. But it might have done, although it wouldn't have been shown in the States.
We lost you for a second. Rick, your audio went really quickly for a minute. Can you repeat,
okay.
please?
Yeah, no problem. Am I back now?
Yeah.
Back now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Now, it is highly possible, because Living in Harmony was shown at the end of, beginning of 1968 in the UK, January 68, I think at first. Spectre of the Gun, I don't think was made until a few months later. Is it possible that someone could have seen it and gone, minimalist, Western, timpani drums, let's do it?
Probably not.
And seen that, or is it just coincidence?
I mean, yeah, it's possible, but it's extremely low possibility.
Yeah. But I, as I said, I want TV that challenges the way I think. And
I just think it's interesting.
Spectre of the Gun in Star Trek.
The way that these two shows sometimes are alike, you know. And I like to at least pretend that there's some kind of a connection there. By the way,
and why not?
Did I mention that we are going to give away today to a lucky audience member a I Am Not a Number shirt?
Wow.
These are the new ones. They just came in. It's got the I Am Not a Number on the front and the URL on the back. And this is the new on really black design. So it really pops out, I think. What do you think?
Fantastic. If we're not lucky enough, or if people watching this aren't the lucky winner, where can they buy these from?
I'm glad that you asked.
Yeah.
They can be purchased from gillstore.com. I was an early adopter, I guess. So once we're done deconstructing the episode, as it were, then we will have one of our mods come on, to whom I'm very grateful, and spin the wheel, and then they'll put a link in the chat where you can sign up, and it'll be a short little URL, and I think it's quite a fetching shirt, don't you?
I do.
I was supposed to send you one of these. I asked your t-shirt size, but I never sent you one.
Oh, I did. I do remember winning a prize, but I'm quite happy for you to donate that prize to somebody else who doesn't require international, very expensive shipping. So don't worry about it too much.
No, it's nothing. It's nothing. It'd be nice if, like, the episode that we watch, which somehow I have to figure out a watch party situation, so that everybody can watch the remastered Colony 3 episode from Danger Man, and then we'll do Ice Station Zebra.
Yeah, we can do that at some point.
Because I think it's going to be difficult otherwise to get people to watch that remastered episode of... I mean, it might be out there somewhere, but hell, it might be on YouTube. I don't know.
I'm not sure it is.
I bet it is. I bet it is.
We might be limiting the amount of people that can kind of take part in that if we do pick something.
Well, I mean, our viewership figures don't get too hard. We're at 8 right now. So if everybody wanted to, you know, sort of join the party, we could make it happen. I just have to get with my mods and figure out how it works.
Yeah, no problem. Keep us all updated on that. How do you feel generally about when a TV series for 1 week kind of does something that's a different theme? Because Red Dwarf has a Western episode, you know. Buffy had a musical episode, you know.
But their Western was a parody of these kinds of shows, you know. And with the Cisco Key. He's so good. Danny John Jules is so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, but the linchpin was absolutely Robert Llewellyn.
Do you like it though when a series steps out of what its normal scenario is and
Damn
throws
it!
at you
I was
for that
trying to
week?
change the subject.
No, I'm trying to keep to the subject. Yeah, I want to know whether you.
I know.
Like it.
I mean, this one goes way out. I'll say that. This episode goes way, way out. I do like the fact that, and I will answer your question. I do like the fact that this show predicted virtual reality as best as it could 35 years before anybody else talked about it. Certainly on television. Yeah, I do. In general, a show that has 17 episodes seems to me should have an overall arc and a plan of attack, you know. But that's just me, screenwriter, storyteller thing. If we're talking about, let's say, a 4-year Star Trek franchise, like this one, which is Enterprise, the Blu-ray set. It's just recently digitally remastered. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, in a show like this, I absolutely do like a show that throws a loop at a character or a planet or whatever. That's one of the things I really like about Sliders, Tracy's show, which I also picked up the entire series box set of, because I'm doing an entire series rewatch. If it's a long enough series, certainly like Stargate or something like that, yeah, I love those. The 200th episode of Stargate was one of those wacky episodes. The 400th episode of Stargate SG-1 was one of those wacky episodes. So yeah, I do. Do you?
I do, because as I say, I like to be challenged a little bit, and I think especially in their kind of shows that become after a while, and this is not slagging them off, become quite formulaic. Like, all shows become formulaic after a while. Danger Man did, Star Trek did. You kind of know what's coming. But suddenly, for you to switch on and go, okay, now why are they in the OK Corral? I want to press them in that way, and not just, oh, they're going to go.
I don't know if they ever mentioned why they were in the OK Corral. I think it was just everybody realized, even as a kid when I saw it, I realized they didn't have enough money to shoot this episode.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, though, I know that we're supposed to be talking to the prisoner, and back to that in just a sec. We have another hour, so we're good. I did pick up and pre-ordered. I'm not sure if you're a fan. I bet you are, though. It even has a little booklet. That's really cool. The remasters of Star Trek The Next Generation, the entire series.
Now, you see, you're going to hate me. I only like original series Star Trek. I do not like
I thought you were
going to
say that. I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I actually know the guy that did the bonus features. I know the guy that did the bonus features, the interview with the cast and stuff from the 3rd season forward. But I think it's pretty cool.
That's a nice set.
It is a nice set, yeah. And I was really I was hoping Tracy was gonna find his way on so I could ask him if he'd autograph it for me, because
I'm sure he would.
He worked during the 1st season and wrote several episodes, some of which he took his name off of.
Yes, well, of course, one, of course, was based on The Prisoner.
Isn't it interesting the things that you learn when you're watching I'm Not a Number.
It is.
That you never expected to learn because we were talking about something completely different.
Well, I hope that people
And now,
do learn
for a
things
man
from
with
us.
a fish for a head. And speaking of the devil, welcome Tracy Tormé. Maybe.
Oh, I hope so. I miss chatting with Tracy.
I have too. I've talked to him on the phone, but it's been strictly, how's your internet working? And he said he thought it was working better today.
Yeah, that's the problem when you live
they
in.
got a new setup, but yeah, they still live on the top of a mountain.
Yeah, yeah.
So until
here,
he's fully materialized, if Harmony has a weak point, it's, as you mentioned, that final reveal of that something of a letdown. Number 6 waking up in his real clothes to find himself in a town inhabited by life-size cardboard cutouts is a pretty freaky visual. Something of a letdown. But finding out it was another trick by this week's number 2 and seeing the main characters revealed as their true selves, the judge is really number 2. And I think I need to ask Tracy to turn off his YouTube and just on the StreamYard.
Robin, will you come in here, please? You guys can actually hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, but you have to turn your speakers off. Or turn off your YouTube if you have a YouTube window going. Were you watching the show before you came in through StreamYard?
Well, we lost him again.
I think he's just frozen for the moment. And my brother Ari says, "Good on you, Rick."
Hey, I didn't know you had a brother.
Yep.
Hello, Emperor Sin.
Yes. He is my older brother, in fact. And here's another Tracy.
Okay.
Hello? Tracy?
Hear me at all?
You're really robotic sounding. You kind of sound like that. Ivan Ivanovich mentions you couldn't have DeForest Kelley on your show for 3 full seasons and not shoot at least one Western. That's a good point, actually. Spectre of the Gun was shot entirely indoors, says Yvonne.
That makes perfect sense, given the
I don't
minimalist.
think I knew that. I guess it was all in the studio.
Yeah.
I figured it was on the back lot.
Yeah, no, thinking about it, it is studio because they've got like a purple surround background, haven't they, to try and make it look like it's an alien.
Well, there's very little there, you know. It's mostly facade. Except for the one thing that they had to build where the guy had to roll off of after he got shot. The rest of it was pretty Spartan, actually.
I mean, the prisoner crew were lucky that they had the backlot at MGM available, and the film had been made the year before called Eye of the Devil, for which the Harmony set was built. If that film hadn't have been made, they wouldn't have had the ready-made Western set there, and you wonder whether was one of the reasons why they made a Western. They knew they could because the set was already
right. Yeah,
there that could be adapted. If that set hadn't have been there,
that's not necessarily a bad way to write.
Yeah, no. I mean, the episode A, B, and C, which obviously we reviewed, or you reviewed Was I on that one? I can't remember if I did that one or not. But A, B, and C.
I think of you as being on all of them.
Oh, well, aren't you lovely? A, B, and C was partly written because Anthony Skene, who wrote that episode and also wrote Dance of the Dead and Many Happy Returns, he went for a walk around the backlot, having a look at various sets, and thought, well, can I use this one? Yeah, we'll have a French party. So, because this looks like a kind of a French chateau. And then, we'll do the final scene down the street because we've got a fake street. So a lot of A, B, and C was based around what sets they had available. So, you know, Living in Harmony, I'm sure, was partly the same. We can do a Western because we've got a set that can easily be adapted to look like a Western.
And the funny thing is, back then, they would race through the writing process. That's how good they were on this level. And if they only had, you know, 2 weeks for this set, because it was a standing set that was going to be struck at some point, then they had to write it and costume it and make it up and hairdress it and all of that stuff in 2 weeks. And it's funny. This seems sometimes to me, Rick, like the show that almost never got made on several occasions.
Yeah. I mean, I think the production values look great in Harmony. Don't you think that a TV episode, which you say was just thrown together in a few weeks?
Sorry, Rick, your audio kind of fell apart there. Could you repeat, please?
I certainly can. Let me know if I'm still not quite right. I think production-wise, Living in Harmony looks amazing. Considering it was only put together in a few weeks, I think it looks as good as a feature film does. I think it looks like a proper Western. I think it looks amazing.
I think, as you were saying before, the weakest point of this episode is the end. Even though, like I said, they sort of invented virtual reality 35 years before anyone had it on television. Having number 6's individualism save him from confusing truth and fiction is smart enough, and it's nice to see the village's efforts fail so thoroughly that 2 of their own wind up dead. But in trying to give the different format a plausible explanation, it just raises more questions. The biggest one being, what exactly was the point of all this? To break number 6, of course, that's always the point. But for once, no one asked him why he resigned.
Yeah. Well, did they? You're testing my memory now, and I've not seen this episode in a while because I haven't watched the series for a while.
Oh, I thought you
point
watch them freshly every day like I do. You have a good enough working knowledge of the whole series that you don't need to do a rewatch. Sorry, go ahead.
I've watched it so many times. But is there dialogue where he's directly asked, "Why won't you carry a gun? Why won't you carry a badge? Why won't you carry?" I guess it's kind of the same, or the Western version of why did you resign?
Can you repeat the last part of your last sentence?
Yeah. When he's asked, or intimated, why aren't you carrying a gun, number 6? It's the same as being asked, "Why you resign?" It's just a Western version.
Huh. Ivan Ivanovich mentions...
Is it you that's gone, or is it me?
No, I was just reading. Ivan Ivanovich wrote, the streets scenes for multiple Star Trek episodes were shot on the Desilu lot, which for some reason I imagine is being sort of attached to the Paramount lot.
I did wonder, what's the episode with the pizzas on the ceiling? Is it called Operation Annihilate?
Yes.
They kind of beam down to what is supposedly kind of a star base, and it just looks like they're kind of at the local library. And I did wonder where they filmed that, but I guess that was just
right.
offices at the studio, I guess.
Well, they always tried to shoot in the most futuristic looking studios and stuff, buildings. A lot of places did that, actually.
So presumably, I'm not a Star Trek episode, but presumably, unlike The Prisoner, a lot of this stuff would still exist. So some of the locations from Star Trek, obviously we have Port Merion and we have some of the London locations, but obviously the MGM in Boreham Wood was completely flattened and there's now a housing estate on it. So we can't go to Harmony and we can't go to, the
right.
streets and so on. So how much of Star Trek still exists? Do we know?
Location-wise, a lot of places, yeah. They shot on location in the original series at a place near L.A. I want to say they're called Kingman Rocks, but they're not. Tracy and my brother Ari will be able to tell me. Say again, Tracy?
Bronson Canyon.
Hey, Tracy, I can hear you.
Hey,
yeah.
Miracle.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Hi, Tracy. Great to hear
It's
you.
been a while.
Thank you. I heard most of what you guys were saying. It was very frustrating because I was there like a ghost, but I couldn't get a Ouija board out to show you that I was here.
Oh, Ivan Ivanovich got it right.
Couple
the Vasquez Rocks, where Arena
Rock.
took place. Yeah,
that is in Bronson Canyon.
Which a boy from Kansas and a guy from the UK might not have any idea where that is, but go ahead.
This was obviously the legendary episode that was never aired in America. Is that right?
Yeah.
And can you just give me the
correct,
quick
Tracy.
reason for why not?
It didn't air when it originally ran, but it ran in syndication, right, Trey? Rick?
But what was the reason for?
Well, we only
what was the reason for initially?
Yeah, we only discovered about 2 years ago the actual reason. For many years, people have thought, was it because of Vietnam and they didn't want to show people refusing to carry a gun? Was it because of the drugs? Was it because of the violence? But it was simply that CBS had to pull one of the shows because something important in the news had happened that week, which they had to cover instead. And it was inappropriate to show The Prisoner in that slot. And it was as simple as that. It was just a scheduling decision because of something that had happened in the news that week. Unfortunately, because of urban myths and fans, all these stories have cropped up about, was it because of Vietnam? Was it because of drugs? But it was just simply a scheduling decision. Somewhere online there is an interview on camera with the executive at CBS that was in charge of making that scheduling decision. I'll send Gil the link to it, and you can both watch it and in your own time and hear from him talking in a bit more detail about it. Sadly, he couldn't remember what the thing was in the news. We know that Chimes at Big Ben was shown a week late because of would it have been Bobby Kennedy's funeral? One of the Kennedys.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So that's why Chimes at Big Ben was 1 week, but they then showed it a few.
RFK was killed in '69 in California, right?
That would be about right.
He was running for president late as a not really a third party, but he sort of joined as a Democrat, and there was already a Democrat in the race, so it wasn't very nice.
I had a question to the red-haired guy in the top hat. Do I remember correctly that he appears another time in the series? He does, right?
He does. He appears twice
then
more.
did you?
He appears very briefly in the episode we're going to watch next week, which is called "The Girl Who Was Dead." But that's only
Right.
a bit part. He appears very much in the last episode. He plays number 48, also in Top Hat, a different character, but yet very much a pivotal part of the final episode. His name was Alexis Canner, and in the 60s, he was quite a popular actor. Just Robert F. Kennedy's funeral was 8th of June 1968, and that was
68.
the week where the second episode of The Prisoner was supposed to air.
I remember from
but
68
it
in
didn't
his
air.
life, he was with Cesar Chavez doing the sit-in against the table grapes or thing or whatever. I don't remember
I was
exactly.
Now,
talking
for
to
those
Cardinal, sorry, Tracy, carry on.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, for those conspiracy buffs in the audience, after we've all focused so much on the JFK assassination and the many, strange elements of that, what I found out very surprisingly is that Bobby Kennedy, the idea that there was a conspiracy behind his shooting, I
It
think
was
is
even
now
a bigger
way more
conspiracy
solid.
than it was JFK's.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, there were
It's a
bullets
very-
all over that room.
There was I used to be friends with the guys that ran Unsolved Mysteries, the NBC show, and they made me aware of this photographer who was kind of a famous celebrity type photographer. He was in the hotel ballroom when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, and he was standing up on a chair and shooting him right at the time when the assassination took place. And it wasn't found out until like 20 years after Bobby Kennedy was killed that this guy may have taken photographs of the crucial moment in that assassination. So, to make a long story short, they finally tracked this guy down and compelled him legally to give his photos over to the authorities. And he managed to find his photographs. He sent them to the authorities. They were being sent there by a courier. The courier stopped for a minute at like a fast food place or something like that. And
No.
they rifled his car and they took his photographs. And they've never been shown. They've never been found again.
I wonder who sent
Pretty
them.
interesting.
Was it us?
Yeah.
Or was it them?
The JFK assassination has, there have come to be some rational people that think it really was Lee Harvey Oswald. And now
Right.
I think that the Bobby Kennedy assassination is much more solid. If you look at all the facts
Especially
about
the
it.
MK Ultra stuff.
The
The
girl in the polka dot
things
dress.
that we know that they did actually as kind of a very real world prisoner, the way that they fucked with Sirhan, hypnosis and drugs, plays right exactly into this episode of The Prisoner that we are talking about.
A Manchurian Candidate for real.
Yep. And
But I wanted to
think
also
his
say, Gil,
family has.
I agree with you as far as your reaction to. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, about what the fuck did I just watch?
I agree with you as far as your reaction to this episode. I got to admit, I was watching it and it just seemed like such a left turn from the normal series. And I found myself having the same type of reaction you did. It kind of took me out of the show, and I was getting impatient to find out what's this all about, what's really going on.
Right.
So I didn't really like the episode, to be honest with you. But yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because just before you came on, about 20 minutes before you came on, Rick asked me, did I like the episode? And I said, I don't know what the fuck I just watched. I'm not sure if I like it or not. But when it comes down to it, I think once you factor in everything and you realize that the show that fucks with you is really fucking with you hard on this episode. I mean, let's face it, after the body swapping episode, anything goes, right? But this one follows, if you think about it, metaphorically the same aspects as the other parts of the show. So it's a legitimate episode for sure. I think it touches on all the points that are important. The nonconformity, the resigning from his job, his giving up the star, or the gun. First he had the gun but no star, and then he had the star but no gun. Right? Rick, is that the way it went?
Yeah, that's fair. I wonder if I can ask Tracy, as someone who obviously wrote for shows and had his own show, was it always very tempting to want to turn left and just do something way out there just because you wanted to do something different? Because they just wanted to do a Western, so they did one,
He has done.
I would say that if a show is on the air, luckily enough to do multiple episodes, there are these ebbs and flows during the course of a season where you just kind of reach a dead end on ideas, or you think you've got a good idea and then you realize it's too similar to something you've already done. So I think there is a natural, what's that word? Proclivity? But there's a natural...
yes, proclivity.
There's a natural desire sometimes to just drop the whole formula and do something that's way out there. And I think that does happen on a lot of shows.
Yeah,
and
especially shows that go multiple seasons.
Right.
When they can do a weird character thing.
I can tell you when I had my time with Patrick, one thing that I very distinctly remember him talking about was that he was griping that he had to do 17 episodes. And he was saying it absolutely should not have been more than a dozen. But the network wanted the 17. But I think we proved over the latter half of that season that it shouldn't have gone that far, that we were starting to get stale.
I don't know.
We were starting.
Rick, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a valid point. I mean, I love these left field episodes that we end up with. The last half a dozen episodes, 4 or 5 of them are kind of off the wall.
What do you think about the idea that
they only exist? Tracy is absolutely right. Patrick was right as well. They only exist because they'd run out of ideas. How they couldn't go any further with the. We've said this before, but they couldn't go any further with the let's have him try and escape again this week, or let's have him be tortured to find out what he knows again this week. They'd done that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. So they'd finish it at that point, or we can make some other episodes, but they're not going to be anything like the rest of the series. And that's what we've ended up with. The body swap episode last week. We end up with the fantasy spy show next week, Girl Who Was Death. And we end up with the finale, which is not like any other episode in the series. And the same is true of the Western. They'd run out of ideas.
I wanted to mention really briefly to Tracy that I'm doing an entire series rewatch of Sliders.
Oh wow!
I've got the box set, and before you came
Hopefully
on,
you're not going to want to kill me.
No,
by the
not
time
at all.
you're done with it.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. But I was talking with Rick, and we were talking about how do you feel about shows that take that left turn. And I said, I think it works a lot better on a show that's a series that's got lots of seasons, like maybe Star Trek The Next Generation or something like that. And I mentioned that I had this Star Trek Enterprise Blu-ray set that I just picked up. And that they probably could have done something like that. In fact, they did in this series. It also has some really weak episodes, but it's a nice set. And especially, you could do that to a show that had, say, 7 seasons. Like this very fetching Star Trek The Next Generation Blu-ray remastered set.
Wow.
And I was kidding around with Rick earlier and saying I was hoping that Tracy would show up so I could ask him if he'd sign it for me.
I'll probably sign it for you and with one of my pseudonyms. How would that be?
That'd be cool.
Oh, I'm kind of kidding.
You could sign it more than once.
But I'll tell you guys, you're so knowledgeable, Gil. You knew that I wrote 6, and 2 of them are different pseudonyms, which was obviously my protest against what was done to the scripts. But it's kind of an interesting story.
Especially the Royale,
first
right?
Yeah. The first feature film that I ever did, which was originally called Witching Hour, and they changed the name to Spellbinder. And
that's too bad.
So I knew they were making a lot of.
I like Witching Hour. It sounds
So
like an
do I,
anthology
believe
that
me.
Rod Serling would front.
Yeah. So anyway, when they started filming the movie, because it was my first movie, I was always excited about, wow, going onto the set of the first feature I've ever done. I was really looking forward to it. And by this time, the director of Spellbinder, one day the producer had come to me and said, I've got a great idea who should direct your movie. And I said, oh, okay, who? My wife. And I said, well, has your wife ever directed a movie? Oh, no, but she's very talented. So then they start filming. They start filming, and I want to go down to the set. So I go to the set, and I'm standing in the background while they're shooting the scene. And they keep calling someone Jeff. And I thought, Jeff? There's no Jeff in my script. My main character's name had been Keith Mills. And now he was Jeff Mills. And I asked, why did they make that change? And the director lady said to me, oh, I've always hated the name Keith. So I just had to change it. So I thought, oh, okay. So I was really privately outraged at that, the way that they can just change something that you've done on a whim, right? So my first pseudonym that I used on Star Trek was Keith Mills, because I thought it was like a little private joke to myself that was the name that got removed from Witching Hour. So I thought it was kind of appropriate that should be my first pseudonym. I hope I haven't put the whole audience to sleep with that story.
No, not at all. I'm interested in. I'm interested in the same kind of story about the second one.
The second one, which may have even been worsely mangled than the first one, I just use the name Terry Devereaux. And the reason that I
Mhm.
use that name, all my life I've been called Terry and Stacy by a lot of people. By accident, they just forget my name. And Devereaux's, I've got a kind of a screwy French last name, so I thought Devereaux kind of sounded like a pseudo-French last name, so I used Terry Devereaux. But I can tell you guys, they really hate it when you use a pseudonym. I mean, if you ever want to get even with anybody, attitudes are, oh, what an insult that he's not even putting his
Tracy,
real name on the piece.
your audio stopped for a second. Can you repeat?
Oh. I was just talking about the way that the powers that be can't stand it when writers use pseudonyms because they think it's the
they take their
ultimate
name
slap.
off of it. It means they're basically doing an Alan Smithy
Right.
as a writer.
I mean, you think it's such shit that you can't even use your own name.
Cordwainer or Bird. Well, I mean,
yes, Harlan,
as you well know, when you turn something in, you know, it's a very personal thing, and you feel like it's done. If you've done good work, you know it's good work, especially if you do a lot of it, which you have. And when you start getting notes from the studio, it kind of raises the old ire a bit, right?
Yeah, when the studio or the network starts to say that you're being difficult or you've become difficult, that's a badge of honor. You're probably doing something right.
That's when you say, fuck those guys. I'm out of here.
Right.
Michael Beacom says, Tracy, sounds like you would identify with McGowan, who got labeled difficult for resisting people messing with his work.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that this subject's been brought up because it is absolutely the case that McGowan was thought of as difficult, and that when that particularly came to the fore was when they were trying to sell the series to America to CBS. The head of CBS, Michael Dan, watched the first cut of the first episode, Arrival, and turned around and said, "We can't have this because we can't have this guy losing every week. You know, you've got to make this guy win every week. You've got to make him a winner. The Americans like winners. I don't want someone who loses every week." And McGowan turned around and said, "Well, you go and make that show because that's obviously the show that you want to make. I'm going to carry on making my show." And Michael Dan then went to Lou Gray, who was head of ITC, and said, "I'm having terrible trouble with this Patrick McGowan, you know." And Lou Gray said, "I never have any trouble with Patrick McGowan." And Michael Dan said, "Well, why don't you have any trouble with him?" And Lou Gray just turned around and says, "I just always give him what he wants." And
that's right. That's right. I was expecting you were going to say something like, "We just drink and have cigars." But
No,
that's actually it.
Always give him what he wants. And that's a great quote because
yeah,
McGowan was very much like that. He wanted to make
that's the accurate quote.
And that's how The Prisoner got made, even because he was bored of Danger Man.
Oh, yeah, they did it on a handshake.
Every week.
Yep.
Danger Man was the same every week. Oh, he's going to solve this case or whatever. It was becoming very formulaic. He went to Lou Gray and said, "Look, I want to do my own show. It's going to be unlike anything you've seen before. This is what it's going to be about."
Wait a minute. Hang on a second.
It's so crazy, it might just work. So go ahead.
Rick, as long as we're picking nits, isn't it true that Lou Gray came to Patrick McGowan and wanted to do another series of Danger Man or another spy show? And he said, only if we do this idea that I have. And it turned out that he only had, like, part of an idea for his show.
Yeah, basically, they were just starting the fourth season of Danger Man, which was going to be in colour. They made 2 episodes, and Patrick McGowan said, "Look, I just can't carry on with this." And Lou Gray was saying, "Well, you've got to do another series for me. You know, the Americans love you."
But you're the highest paid actor in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. He was the highest paid actor on television. Turned down James Bond on by that point.
2 occasions, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly what happened. He said, "This is the new show I want to do." Patrick McGowan got out some paperwork he'd put together, and Lou Gray said, "I don't want to see any of that. Just tell me about it. Just tell me." So Patrick McGowan said, "This is what it's going to be about." New grade, his exact words were, "It's so crazy, it might work." Shook his hand.
Really?
There was no
That's
contract. He just shook his hand and said, "Go away and make it." It was the most expensive TV show ever produced at that time, The Prisoner.
really. The funny thing is, a lot of people say the same thing about the original series of Star Trek. That up until then, it was the most expensive show ever made. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is interesting.
I keep finding
Rick,
all of these analogs between Star Trek and The Prisoner, but maybe I'm the only one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Hey, Rick. How close did Patrick really come to ever doing the James Bond thing? Was there ever a time when he really seriously considered it and almost did it, or did that never really happen?
I stationed Zebra.
No, he turned it down flat. There was no consideration on McGowan's part. The James Bond originally was going to be a TV series in the late 1950s. Ralph Smart, who went on to be Danger Man, of course, and Ian Fleming sat down and had meetings with a guy called Ian Stewart Black. They wanted to do Ian Fleming's James Bond stories on the small screen on television. They would just call James Bond. And then Ian Fleming had cold feet. But Ralph Smart and Ian Stewart Black continued the idea, renamed it Lone Wolf, cast Patrick McGowan, renamed it Danger Man. That's how Danger Man was born. Danger Man was originally a James Bond, misogynistic, violent character. As soon as they cast McGowan, took one look at the script and said, "Well, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to beat anybody up. I'll defend myself. I'm not going to administer it up. There's going to be no misogyny. I'm not getting in bed with any women. If you want me in this part, you've got to write it as the secret aim with no guns and no bells." And that's how he was from that moment forward. So when he was after Bond, he turned it down flat straight away because he saw him as an unpleasant, violent character. McGowan's on record saying, "When I'm on screen, I'm against someone's home, and therefore I should behave accordingly." And that's how he saw television. So I'm against your home, I'm going to behave accordingly. I think that's a great way to be, to be that more realistic. You could say holding back. People have been one of the most famous, successful actors, but he wouldn't play the game that you have to play. He wouldn't do that. Yeah. And he had his own moral standpoint. And I admire him for that. But yes, to answer your question, it was never a consideration on his part. He was asked, and he immediately said no because he didn't want to play that sort of character. He thought that the James Bond stories were very thin. That there wasn't any depth to them. He felt scripts were kind of pretty poor, to be honest. There's something to be said for that. It's great fun to watch the action sequences and the great performances and the larger than life actors that we see playing Bond. But when you analyze the storylines and the scripts, they probably are pretty weak. So I think Patrick had a point.
Tracy, I just wanted to ask, is there a way that we can get your camera more toward your face? Because all we can really see right now is the ceiling.
Sorry, is that better?
That's better. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
I wanted to bounce this off of both of you guys and see what you think. As far as Living in Harmony goes, this episode, for all of its allegory, metaphor, bombast, and I think the most silence there's ever been in an episode of this show yet, this one is a definite loss for number 6. He kills 5 men in rapid succession with a 150-year-old 6-shooter without even being wounded, and we find out why when they all come out of virtual reality. What do you think of... what does it say about a random episode of 1967's The Prisoner that they predicted virtual reality 35 years early?
Yeah, well, I'm sure most people that like The Prisoner like it because of how prescient it was on how futuristic it was. There's a lot of themes that play in the piece that I think are ahead of its time. And I think that's what makes it so unique. I mean, if they'd never come up with the idea for the rover device, that would take a lot of the science fiction out of the show. But
Right.
as soon as rover appears, right, that's a heavy science fiction-y concept. And I think they were pretty consistent with being ahead of their time. When you look back at how long ago the show aired. So I think that was a really, good touch to always throw those sort of heavy sci-fi themes into the shows, into the episodes. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of the original rover device before it was a balloon. It was kind of a weird go-kart thing with a flashing light on top.
Oh,
and that
no.
was originally going to be.
No, I never knew that.
Yeah, and it looked hideous. So it's fantastic that they came up with the balloon idea instead, because you're right.
It's much more organic.
Yeah, much more kind of mysterious. But Gil's absolutely right that this episode, every episode of The Prisoner foresaw something, whether it was credit cards, cordless telephones, CCTV watching your every move, state control, fake news in the media, all the things that we're talking about in modern life today. And yes, it predicted virtual reality, torture by hallucinogenic drugs years before it became popular, because it's never been a popular thing, but became kind of a bit more in our consciousness. And I think this episode does that. But I was saying before you came on, Tracy, that I think what they wanted to do with this episode and the next week's episode was just to have a bit of fun. They wanted to do a Western, but they did one, and I think they did a great job of making a Western.
Is there something that either of you know about that has to do with the kid or number 8 actually strangling Kathy, or what was her number? 22?
I can't remember what her number 12 maybe. I don't think it matters what her number was, but she ended up.
But in real life, why did he? I mean, when he stopped being the kid and became number 2's assistant, who is the judge, he kills her twice, because he kills her once when she's part of the virtual reality thing, and then in the end, when they're done, he strangles her again in real life, and then runs up about 8 feet and flops over onto a mat.
Yeah. It's because and there is a line in the episode, at the end of the episode, when they're all in number 2's office, where he says something like, "It's amazing that number 6 can separate fact and fantasy so quickly."
Oh, yeah.
And what happens here is the number 8 himself hasn't been able to separate the fact from the fantasy, and nor is the girl, because she's standing in the corner crying over the betrayal of number 6, even though it wasn't real. And at the end, when she's dying, she looks up at him and says, "I wish it had been real." The experiment hasn't worked. They're dealing with experimental drugs, and the experiment hasn't worked because it's affected them all far more deeply. It's not a case of the headphones have come off, so now we're being our normal selves.
And yet, I think this is a loss for number 6.
I would call it a draw. I don't think it's a win for the village, is it? Because the number 2's 2 assistants are both dead, and they haven't been able to find out what anything about number 6.
They didn't even ask him why he resigned.
Well, I think they do in a different way, as we discussed earlier.
Actually, Michael Beacom mentioned earlier that they do ask him why he resigned, but I don't remember how, because they didn't come right out and ask it, right?
No, I'm pretty sure, but this is from memory. I'll have to get my script out or watch the episode again. But I'm pretty sure from memory, they say something like, "Why is it you won't carry a gun? Why won't you be sheriff?" Which is the Western.
Oh, right. They're referring to his new job.
Yeah.
And Hale intensified. who says Sliders was so ahead of its time as well. All the great ones are. Yeah, about 20
Thank you so
years
much.
ahead of its time, I think.
Thank you so much.
Somehow,
That's very nice.
I knew when the lawman went down. Somehow I knew when he got back up, he was going to see a cardboard cutout. And like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen these.
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry
coming
to
at these
take
fresh.
sorry to take your job away from you, Cardinal, but Michael Beacon's just put up a comment. He's literally just watched it, and the judge asked him, why did he turn in his badge? So I knew it was something equivalent. So he is basically outright asked why he resigned.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. I remember
Yep.
that
Thank you,
scene.
Michael
Good
Beacon.
point.
Michael Beacon has saved us as always. I'm interested, Tracy. You say you didn't particularly enjoy the episode. Was it because it was just too
Freaky deaky,
so to speak, off of it?
You know what? I've personally thought that if the show is going to take such a serious left turn, where they don't show the usual opening, and they're immediately right into the Western story and the town of Harmony and all that built up an expectation in me that I wanted to see what's the answer. Why is this happening this way? What's the explanation for the whole concept? And I really felt honestly that when I was about 10 or 20 minutes into the show, I had lost my focus, which I think is kind of what Gil had been saying.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
It was so abstract that I was thinking more about all the things I didn't understand instead of really focusing on the show at hand. So I think that was really my problem.
It
And I think
really
it's pretty
did
similar to
take
what
me
Gil
out
was
of the
saying.
episode to try and
Me
figure out
too.
what was going on. Yeah.
Another thing, guys, I was thinking about Patrick while we were talking. One thing that I definitely shared with him that one day, he had a real very cynical attitude toward the sort of talking heads of the movie business and the TV business, that they're all just a bunch of idiots. It was kind of his attitude. And
I think that's more true today, unfortunately, than it ever has been.
And
it's like they say in Plan 9 from Outer Space, you people of Earth are idiots.
A favorite movie of mine. I love that movie.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, but it's funny because, Rick, I don't know if you knew this, but I kind of had two mentors in my early career. I would say they were father figures, but they were older than that. So they were both more like grandfather figures. And I'm talking about Gene Roddenberry and Joe Stefano of Outer Limits and Psycho fame.
Yay, Outer Limits.
And they each had pleasure in telling me stories about some of the stupidity they had to deal with just to stay afloat,
Yeah, I bet Gene had a lot of stories to tell you. One question I quickly wanted to ask both of you while I've got this graphic up. Who is this bishop who's coming? What do you think that's all about? See, right behind
there is a guy
number 6.
Yeah, there is a guy on the internet.
What does it say there?
There's a guy on the internet called David Stimpson. The bishop is coming. I don't know what it says underneath, but there's a guy on the internet. His name's David Stimpson. He's written a book about the prisoner called The Prisoner Dusted Down, and he has studied all of the posters that you see in the episode Living in Harmony. There's about 13 different posters. He's studied them all. He's recognized who he's being referred to in all of the posters. He's got a blog. If you type in David Stimpson into Google, he's got a prisoner blog. He comes up, I think, first or second link. If you trawl through that blog, don't do it now because there's so much content on it, it will take you all night.
What's his name? He has
identified all the people in David Stimpson, Stimpson. David Stimpson. And somewhere in his blog, you have to trawl through years and years of posts, He's identified the posters and who's being talked about in them, and so on. So it's great that you've focused in on that poster. He's studied them all. It's amazing, isn't it, what people do? You get this sliders, Tracy.
Oh, yeah.
You get people
It is.
who almost know more about the show than you do, and you came up with it.
Oh, it's totally true.
Trust
Totally
me,
true.
there have been a lot of people getting in touch with me about their anticipation of sliders returning, and people are, well, let's just say I'm awash in ideas, unsolicited ones. It's like, when you work in LA, everyone's got a screenplay.
That's totally true too.
Yeah.
I mean, literally true. It's not just
Every
a myth.
bellboy, every...
It's totally true. It's completely true. Yep. I was going to tell you guys, just to quickly end this little tangent I went off on, the story that Stefano used to focus on, the only way that he could get the Outer Limits on the air was if it had a monster in every episode.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was first told that, he was horrified, like, that's not what I want to do here as the monster of the week. And Stefano had been in vaudeville a long time ago, and there was a thing in vaudeville called the bear. And what the bear was, whenever you were doing a sketch or a skit in vaudeville and you were in trouble and just wanted to get off the stage, they would bring this dancing bear onto the stage that would dance on the part of the stage so it would distract everybody, and then you could get off the stage. So Stefano always considered the monster, he called them the bear. That's all he ever used to call him.
The bear of the week.
So that was interesting. Yeah, exactly. And then this one I think you guys will get a kick out of. Roddenberry told me that when the first Star Trek pilot had been done, they were very close to killing the show, and they especially hated Spock. They hated the Spock character, and they were always threatening to just, we'll go forward with the show, but you've got to lose this Spock guy. You got to get him out of there. So Roddenberry told me with a gleam in his eye that he came up with a gimmick for Spock that he thought would, again, distract the powers that be enough so that they wouldn't kill the character. And it was Spock smoking a space cigarette.
Right.
Which, you heard this before? Which had a green smoke. And he laughed, and I told him, I said, Gene, that was pretty ingenious. Did you ever use it? He goes, oh, are you kidding? I never would have done that in a million years, but I knew it would distract them enough that they'd leave the character alone for a while. And I just thought that was pretty funny.
That is pretty funny. Hey, guys, check out the makeup on this guy. It's pretty impressive stuff. Look at his forehead. It looks raised. They used a little clay or whatever.
This was after the fight sequence?
Yeah, this is after the last fight sequence. That's pretty good makeup for 1967. You don't really see that. And I'll also say, again, what an incredible remaster this is.
It is really good.
Even the stills are like a painting,
It's true.
Amazing. So, before we give away our giveaway, we need a mod to put the URL for the giveaway in. And while we're waiting for a mod to put the URL in the giveaway in, I want to mention next week, The Girl Who Is Death is the episode that we'll be deconstructing. Please keep up on Amazon Prime and YouTube for free with ads. or of course use your physical media if you have physical media.
I always thought that episode was about one of my old girlfriends, but I guess I'm wrong.
Which episode is that? The
girl
girl who was deaf? Yeah. But I'm bummed.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going over some stuff that I had planned, and I'm curious to see how you guys will take it.
Can I just ask Tracy, because obviously we haven't had the pleasure of your company on the show for a few weeks. I don't know if you've been watching the other episodes and not been able to join us.
He has.
How did you find?
Actually.
Yeah, I have.
How did you find the last sort of 4 or 5 episodes since we spoke to you last? Were there any that you really enjoyed, or any that you didn't? Or
Yeah. Can you run some titles by me, because that'll really jog my memory?
yeah, sure. So last week we talked about "Do Not Forsake Me."
Let's start with 3 weeks ago.
Episode. Oh, blimey.
Okay.
And then the week before that we had "It's Your Funeral," which is where one of the number 2s was going to be blown up, and number 6 and a young lady thwart the plan. We had "A Change of Mind," which is where they try and convince number 6 that he's had brain surgery, and is an unmutual, and he wakes up and he's whether that's
unmutual. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the week before that was "Many Happy Returns," or Checkmate.
Yeah, you were here with us for Checkmate.
Yeah, as I recall, I really didn't like "It's Your Funeral" quite as much as I did the other ones. But the other ones you mentioned, I thought were good, solid prisoner episodes. It's really interesting, Rick, because I haven't seen the series in many, many years, and I was kind of hoping
Tracy,
that I wouldn't.
We're having a hard time seeing you. Can you tilt your camera back? Yeah.
Yeah.
Better.
Let me try, guys.
Thank you.
Better.
Yeah.
I was really hoping when I watched these that I would not remember them scene by scene, and I would just try to enjoy them as if I'd never seen them before, and just try to let myself go with the plot and the story. And it's really interesting, guys, that I find there are certain things that I really remember that I had forgotten, but then I'll see something and it'll kick in a memory I have of seeing this in years past. Mostly that's been a positive experience. Once in a while it's negative, because to be honest with you, the red-haired guy with the top hat, when I first saw him again, I thought 2 things. I think he's in a later episode, number 1, and number 2, I've always found that to be really an annoying character. And it just came right back to me like, oh, that character annoys me. And I didn't even know why. But
even though it's a short cameo, also it can be a little disturbing because he's dead, after this episode.
Right.
Which is also another weird thing. They show not 1 but 2 deaths in this episode, other than people being shot by guns, which would raise the body count to 7, I suppose. It is a rather violent episode, but I think that the whole point of it is violence doesn't solve anything. And
I also noticed something else.
The violence solves things, but guns don't solve things because that's permanent. And Michael Beacom says, "The girl who is deaf is my wife. She's an ROTC sharpshooter who can hit the bullseye at 100 yards without a scope. So if I ever really disappoint her, I'll never see it coming."
Yeah, don't pick any fights with her.
Right.
That's
Tracy,
for sure.
you were going to say something then, Tracy, a minute ago. You said you had another point to make.
Yeah.
Tracy didn't see your great pin, unmutual.
I love that. That's another thing came back to me instantly when
You can
I
get these
actually had
off of Rick's website, the
I had a friend.
unmutual.uk.
Oh, cool. I had a friend that was really into The Prisoner, and there was a line in one of the old shows that he used to riff on all the time. He got so obnoxious with it after a few years, but it was the female character that was kind of dressed like Peter Pan, and there's a line
Yep.
In that episode where McGowan says "Mr. Peter Pan," or he says something in that classic McGowan voice, and my friend used to say that all the time. You knock on the door.
Yeah.
I'll bet it's Mr. P. He would do an impersonation of McGowan saying that, right? And that came back to me. I hadn't thought about that in years. That drove
That
us
is
all
exactly
crazy.
how it was in the episode as well.
Yeah. But I gotta say,
Yeah, no, it's exactly how he delivers it. Yeah.
I've got to say, guys, that it's been very enjoyable to see the shows again and to relive my earlier days when I was so mesmerized by this show, because I always felt it. People in television will always claim that something they're working on is really revolutionary, it's really different, it's really groundbreaking, but it's usually not true. And yet, when you go to The Prisoner, it's absolutely true. I mean, whether or not everything they tried to do fully worked or not, that's another story. Most of the time it did, I think. But in general, they were really able to, push the boundaries of storytelling, especially in television, and do something that is really, really unique.
Which
And
is the
that's what I
point,
totally
I
respect.
think, as a screenwriter, speaking just for myself, I think that's the point of writing any good screenplay or any good television. If it doesn't provoke thought, if it doesn't leave the viewer going, huh, not just for a while, but for a long time, like a week, having it be so important that it sinks in over time. I think that's why we write.
I think that's true.
Okay, so Darius Munchausen is going to add the names to the wheel manually, and we're going to go ahead and give away a shirt. This is the brand new, just came today. I Am Not a Number on True Black t-shirt. So the winner will have to make sure and get in touch with me about their t-shirt size. But I rather like it. Tracy, what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So, Darius, how's it going, man?
All right. I'm still getting over being sick, but it's good to be back with the crew.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. I can add the names manually to the wheel.
Yeah, let's do that to everyone that's in the chat, and I can read them off to you if you like.
Sure. I've got Ivan Ivanovich and Herc 130 so far.
Whoops, sorry about that. Well, there's Herc 130. There's Ivan Ivanovich. There's Orville Nation. You, of course. And I think we'd better put Rick the Unmutual on the wheel. Because, another thing I wanted to mention while Darius is doing that, Tracy. I'm going to try to put together a way to do a watch party, because the episode Colony 3 that was restored because it's the prototype in Danger Man for the prisoner is probably difficult for people without the set of the prisoner to see. So
that'd be interesting.
You have that, and Rick has that, and I'm going to try and arrange something. My mods will come up with something, no doubt.
Yeah, like I told you, I've never seen an episode of Danger Man.
Oh, wow. That's crazy, man. Man, that's crazy. Groovy, man.
Damn you, David.
I don't know if you really sounded like that, but that's about the best I can do.
Pretty close.
But that's our giveaway, guys, tonight. It's this freaky T-shirt. I remember the story
While
of...
you're doing the wheel... Oh, sorry, I had a question for Tracy, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, Tracy, watching the episodes again now, so many years later, does the chat that you had with Patrick make more sense now that you're watching the series again than it ever has? Are you watching the episodes thinking, well, that's kind of what he was getting at when I was talking to him? Are you seeing some of that conversation come to life in the episodes, or not so much?
Yeah, I would say largely yes. Yes. It was, again, I think, Rick, that when I met him, I had already told myself this was just going to be a show that would never totally be understood. And I just accepted that it was like, and all the questions that I'd wanted to ask him are never going to be answered. So it was lucky for me to have had that time with him. And then, as I think I told you, Rick, what was so amazing to me was, the first 20 minutes, he was exactly like I was kind of worried he would be like. He was very stern. He was, very guarded, it seemed like to me. And then I think it was just lucky that we made a breakthrough. And once that happened, he just really turned around and became very giving and very open about things. He always maintained that sardonic sense of humor.
Yeah, well, we've
that
discussed
never went
this
away.
before. He did that with everybody. Yeah.
Once you disarmed him,
kind of test
he was
to see
a
who he was
sweethart.
talking to, and you passed the test. It was making sure you weren't an idiot, basically, Tracy, and you showed that you weren't. So he then was able to open up. He was so used to dealing with it.
Well, I really wish, Rick, that I had gone back to the well again and tried to follow up with him. I was busy, and I also didn't want to push my luck on this because it had ended up so nicely. But I do wish that I'd had a second chance, because I thought of a lot of things that I didn't ask him about that I would have liked to. And then I've always really enjoyed when I...
It's always the way I...
Sorry?
I feel the same
You broke up.
thing every time I talk to you, Tracy. We end the call, and I think some more things I feel about you. I was going to say, I feel the same every time I talk to you, Tracy. I have a question I only remember afterwards that I wish I'd have asked.
Yeah, I really...
Okay, guys, we need to bring in the wheel so that we can allow Darius to spin the wheel. Do we have all the names on the wheel, you think, Darius?
I have 7 names on the wheel. I have Ivan Ivanovich, Herc 130, Orville Nation, myself, Rick the Unmutual, Michael Beacom, and Cam Cam.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Wait a minute. Let me double check. Yeah, I think that's everybody. So unless I'm mistaken and you have not been represented on the wheel, please let us know in the chat. And otherwise, spin that wheel.
Do you want me to spin now or
Sure.
wait a moment? Okay.
This is the exciting part.
Big money, big money.
PJ! Woohoo!
Ah!
Wait a minute. Why did I say Darius? What'd you do,
because
Darius?
It passed. I can spin it again because I've won a couple things in the past already. But you want me to just spin it again?
I'm just curious why it said one name and then said another.
It was slowing down at the very end, and it went over
I
the
see.
line.
Okay, so you really are the winner.
Yeah, based on that one
is the winner.
spin.
Okay. Well, that's all that they were given away as one. So, better for Darius, says Orville Nation. I agree. As a matter of fact, all my mods should probably win shirts so that when they come on, they can,
Promote the show.
yeah, they can have the uniforms on. So, congratulations, Darius. Good for you.
Thank you.
Orville Nation is a good loser. Tracy, if you could pan up a little bit more so we can see your face.
Yeah. Sorry about
Thanks.
that. Yes.
I just wanted to ask everybody, including Darius, if there's anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to, or anything about plans to watch Colony 3, Ice Station Zebra after we wrap up.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Rick, anything we didn't cover that you think we need to speak about?
I don't think so. I'm glad that we covered this episode. I know it wasn't your favourite. I know it wasn't Tracy's favourite, but I'm glad that we covered it, because I think we all learnt a lot during the discussion about the genesis of the episode, and I think that's important.
I agree. And
Yeah.
I'm really surprised there's so many rumors out there that even the Wikipedia entry got it wrong. That's
Well,
supposed to be reliable.
well, it's
So,
written by.
I apologize that my
people who want
research
to
was
take-
bad.
That's the problem. That's quite all right. It enabled the discussion to take place, Cardinal, and that's what
It did.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who came up with the starting point, as long as we reach the right destination in the end.
That's a good point.
I'm just sorry that we had you on, Tracy, and it's an episode you didn't enjoy very much. I much prefer chatting to Tracy when you enjoyed it.
Well, I'm sure Tracy will agree with me, or at least I would hope so, that initially not liking it because we didn't understand it and we're trying to figure it out. Now that we know through discussion and other things that it's not really to be figured out, it's just enjoy as it is, and your attempts to figure it out can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, I think that's what happened to both of us.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say adios to you guys and look forward
And
to the
actually,
next one.
Tracy,
Yeah.
if you can hang out a
Yeah.
little bit before, after we end the show, just real quick, couple things I want to mention, and other than that, thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, everybody, for
Congratulations,
listening.
Darius,
So long, everybody. See you next time.
and Cardinal Sin.